right, I'm gonna give YouTube a second to catch up with things because I don't trust it anymore.
Honestly, valid.
Okay, there we go. I think it's good now. Yeah, it drives me nuts that now I have to like sit here awkwardly. I probably need one of those countdown things, but I'm too lazy to like make it. So, all right. Welcome to Sagas Sass Season 2. I'm Tara, along with fellow hosts Jonathan and Nami. This episode will cover Empire of Ivory, Book 4 of the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik.
If you're watching live, join us in the chat, or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sagas and Sass to continue the conversation.
And just a reminder, the views expressed in this show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole.
All right. Well, it is time for us to dive back into Temeraire, y'all, and what a dive it is. Empire of Ivory drags us right back into the story as Temeraire and the Pharaohs, loaded down with the Prussian refugees, are desperately trying to reach Britain. It seems eerie that no British dragons come out to meet them or to help them fight off the French pursuit, and come to find out this is because they're all infected with a deadly plague. Poor babies. Jane Rowland is now commander of the Corps, and she decides to start sending Temeraire and the Pharaohs out on patrols in hopes of keeping the French from knowing how bad things are with the British dragons. Meanwhile, Temeraire takes it upon himself to suggest changes to the dragons' lifestyle that might also help with their illness, including pavilion construction and cooking their food. He and Lawrence are even able to begin suggesting these and more upgrades to the dragon's lifestyle to the government, but, you know, government is as government does, and sadly they don't get very far. Thankfully, though, Temeraire is best boy and decides that his own pavilion should be built in the quarantine grounds so that the sick dragons can use it. Despite every attempt to keep Temeraire from being exposed to the sick dragons, one day he's caught up in pursuit of a French courier, and they crash into the longwing sand pits, which are full of infected longwings and a whole lot of their, well, snot. Gross. However, 2 weeks after this heavy exposure, Temeraire still isn't sick, and they decide that he must have been exposed to the cure as well, having originally caught the plague from a courier dragon during their journey to China and recovered during a stop at Cape Town. And so it's off to Africa. But this time, they're not alone. Maximus, Lily, and the other dragons from Lily's formation all get to tag along as well. Though in another unfortunate twist of events, they're stuck sailing with Riley the slaver again. Ew. Of course, Lawrence and Riley's relationship is already strained, and Lawrence adds insult to injury, I guess, in Riley's dull-ass mind, when he invites a former slave, Reverend Erasmus, and his family to join them for their journey. Surprisingly, though, the sea voyage is pretty blasé, as are their first weeks in Cape Town, until some children bring them the awful stinky mushroom that Temeraire ate in Book 2. And let's be real, we all knew from the start that this mushroom was the cure, right?
Of course, that doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing from then on. It turns out that the mushroom is harmful to local livestock and has been basically eradicated. It's only with the help of 2 native boys, Demain and Sifo, and their tracking dog that the British are able to find any of it at all. And then when they finally come across enough to cure all of the dragons in Lily's formation and to send some back to England, they're captured by natives. Reverend Erasmus is killed in the process, and everyone else who has gone on the mushroom hunt is brought deep into the heart of Africa. So all this time, the British have been assuming that Africa is just full of feral dragons, when almost the exact opposite is true. Silly British, eye roll. Not only are the dragons not feral, they are believed to be reincarnations of tribal leaders and basically run things. It turns out that Erasmus's wife, Hannah, was taken from the tribe of the dragon Kefenses? How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Kefense.
Kefense, who discovered them harvesting the mushrooms. So she is separated from the rest of the group and basically treated like a queen, while Lawrence and the others are imprisoned, and Lawrence is even whipped mercilessly when he refuses to aid the African dragons and their people by drawing an accurate map of Europe. But where is Temeraire all this time, you ask? He and the other dragons were transporting the mushrooms back to Cape Town when their people were captured. But somehow he tracked Lawrence all the way into the interior, and he, Lily, and another dragon, Dulcea, come to their rescue. Now their escape seems almost too easy, but that's because it is. It turns out that most of the African dragons and people had left their inland stronghold to go attack Cape Town. So Temeraire, Lawrence, and the others arrive in the midst of that battle. It's pretty clear that the settlement is lost. That they are able to help most of the colonists escape, one person does, however, choose to remain behind. Once Hannah has collected her 2 daughters from the settlement, they fly away on Kefense, back to Drakanda, hopefully to live happily ever after.
The trip back to Britain is rough, what with all the extra passengers on board the Allegiance. But what makes it even more rough is the fact that all the other colonies on the African coast have been destroyed as well. Now, this is some alternate history you could get behind. Heck yeah, destroy the colonizers. Eventually, the ship is able to land somewhere, and Lawrence and Temeraire discover some survivors. Slavers, holding over 200 malnourished and mistreated people while they eat miscellaneous antelope like kings. Lawrence frees the slaves, and their journey back to Britain continues, with just one more event in store. Riley and Captain Harcourt getting married. Because, oh yeah, by the way, side note, they had a brief affair on the trip to Africa, and now she's pregnant with his baby, and all of that was, like, happening while they were, like, being held hostage, and she's like, what, like 4 or 5 months along at this point, something like that. And all of this, like, is gross, and we hate it because, ew, Riley, like, Catherine, why, girl, why do you have such terrible taste? What is with white women and their terrible taste in men? I'm so sorry, but, like, Nina, honey, I'm looking at you, too. God bring crows back somehow. As the Allegiance arrives back in home waters, though, they're attacked by the French. But here comes Iski Erica, y'all! She's all grown up and somewhere along the lines discovered the concept of capital and has been leading the Pharaohs on forays to capture prizes. She's basically a dragon pirate, and she has decked Granby out. And we freaking love her for it. Sadly, that's about the only fun thing going on in Britain, though, because as it turns out, they sent the infected little courier dragon the Temeraire captured back to France to spread the plague among their dragons. The fuck, guys? Temeraire and Lawrence refuse to stand for this, though, so they steal some of the mushroom cure and deliver it to the French. Bonaparte himself meets with them and tells them that they are welcome to stay in France. But Lawrence is on some Zuko level honor trip as usual and insists on going back to England, even though he knows that he'll be executed for it. And of course, Temeraire, being the goodest boy he is, refuses to let Lawrence go back alone and insists that if he is there, they won't execute Lawrence. Although that remains to be seen, but there are 9 books, so I am tentatively hopeful.
Tentatively hopeful that Lawrence doesn't die.
Well, I mean, we thought the same for Ned Stark too, didn't we?
Exactly. And Tara, you already told us that we get that we get Temeraire's POV in the next book. So, like, what if Lawrence just dies so the rest of the series is Temeraire?
Oh my god! I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be so mad about that, but.
Actually, I do have to say, after, 3 books of being like, wow, Lawrence is just the most wishy-washy asshole. Hate him. Boring McBoringson. He unboring McBoringson himself. Yeah.
I will say this, though. I disagree. I don't think he's super wishy-washy. I just think that he is so obsessed with, like, serving Britain.
He's caught up in manners. He's so caught up in manners that he can't have to think for himself, and he's so busy being like, yes, it must be proper British men.
He's such an upper-class British twit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And he's constantly
he's basically Lord Grantham, a younger Lord Grantham in Downton Abbey. It's
oh my gosh.
Just horrible.
Pretty much all of British aristocracy just has, like, multiple sticks up their butts.
Well, I mean, and he, like,
scientific pronouncement.
He's constantly going on about how he had it so rough when he was a sailor and stuff like that. And it's like, did you though? Because you were still the son of a lord.
Sailors in that era, it was pretty bad.
I'm not disagreeing that he had tough times, but when compared to so many other people,
it's one of those.
I would not have wished being on one of those vessels for anything.
It's one of those things that I think it's sort of like he might have gotten a bit of respect for being the son of a lord, but I don't think he got, like, he still was stuck on a boat.
Yeah.
And had to do sail work. And
I'm not, again, like, not saying he didn't work hard, but there's a lot of this, like, I had it so tough when I had to do this, and this. And it's like, again, compared to so many other people in this series, like,
we're talking about an upper-class British man complaining about his existence while slavery is actively existing. So,
Although, like, hey, at least like in this book, he actively fights against it, like in several different ways. You
Yeah, instead
know,
of just like quietly not talking about it, which is what he used to do, like because they've got that whole like sort of like he starts that like being like the face of like the anti-slavery movement back in England, and like even though he doesn't like actively like kick slavers in the shins like I would have done to say the least of it, he's like for him he's doing something very very bold, and I think that was really really awesome. And I think this book really did it for me in terms of what all these other books were missing previously, because it basically took all of the like issues of colonialism and slavery that are going on right like in the world at this exact moment and went, heck no, we're not doing it anymore. And that is what I wanted from a book like this whole time. And I'm very like salty. I had to wait 3 books to get it. But also like now that I got it, I'm like, all right, I'm solidly here. Literally, like y'all don't even get it. Like when we were talking about this next part of the series, I was like, Tara, if you could find somebody else who likes this series to like maybe take my place so I like never have to read the rest of these books, like I'm not saying I would want that, but I'm also not saying that I wouldn't be really happy if that happened. And like straight up, like I read this book and I was like, holy shit, I would have literally DNF'd right before everything that I cared about happening actually like started to happen. And like it was literally like an aside for a second at the end of this book where they're all like, he comes back from Cape Town, he's like talking to the court marshals, and they're like, oh man, did you guys secretly like get these guys to like get these dragons to like destroy Cape Town? And meanwhile, Harcourt's having none of that. Also, like stunning Catherine moment where she straight up stands up and she's like, oh yes, while we were hostages we managed to like organize a whole group of feral languages and their people in a language we don't even understand, with a translator who barely understands the language she's trying to translate, and managed to coordinate a multi-pronged scaled attack on every single like treaty colonizer base in Africa. Yes.
It was Roland who said that, actually.
It was Roland who said that? Well, great, fantastic. I love Jane. Jane is doing it. Jane is my favorite.
Well, and I honestly, like, I read this book so much earlier than you guys did, because I had gotten to a point where I was like, I'd finished other things and I was like, whatever, I'm just diving into these next Temeraire books. And I remember telling you guys like a month ago, I think, I was like, trust me on this, like, especially Nami and Nick, I was like, I know you guys haven't super been feeling this series, but this is the book where it's like, and I have to believe, and I would love to be able to ask Naomi Novik about this. I have to believe she had a plan like this from the start, because she brings up, the slavery, like the slaver ports in book 2, and the mushroom thing happens in book 2. So it's like, I want to believe that it wasn't just the mushroom, that it wasn't just like, well, they have to go back to Africa because of that mushroom I mentioned. I want to believe that she was in it for the long haul. Do I really think they needed to wait till the 4th book to get here? Like the 3rd book it wasn't bad, but it just felt like it took forever for them to get from like point A to point B in like in the first 3 books. And then this book was this was the real point B. You know what I mean? Like this is the meat of the series. And I can promise you, because I actually just finished Tongues of Serpents this morning. It pretty much, it continues, not in this exact vein. But what happens in Africa doesn't go away, and they keep traveling the world and just kind of coming face to face with the issues with British colonialization. And this book especially, where just slavery just explodes in their face. It was like,
I liked it so much because it makes so much sense that, for Britain, the reason they were able to so effectively colonize places was because of their navy. But their navy doesn't matter if there are dragons everywhere. And when you think about it land-wise, British land just doesn't have as much space for dragons as literally everywhere else. So like there's like a passing sentence at like the very end where like they're talking about how like their colonies in like miscellaneous places and also in Mysore have failed, and Mysore's in India. And I was like, of course it would fail. India has so much more space for dragons. So of course the dragons could literally just tear down these colonies. Like, and like, it stands to reason that if places like China have like relationships with their dragons like this as well, that other places also have the same thing. And it was really, really cool for me to get like the book where it was like, literally these white men are dangerous and they go into Africa and they meet the native population there, and the native population is like, you might insist that you're the good ones, but we don't fucking trust you. But
I mean, you mentioned British colonialism and the slave trade, but as I recall,
it was like all of Europe.
Oh yeah.
That's right. That's what I would say. It was all of Europe, and in fact, I think the British got rid of the slave trade earlier than most of the countries in Europe did.
They did, but not this early. And also,
I know that, but
also, I mean, yes, no, it was the Dutch were definitely involved.
The Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish, primarily. The French, I think, abolished it earlier than the Brits, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, I honestly don't know exactly when, like, how involved the French even were in it, but they were, I'm sure, to some extent, but it definitely wasn't to the level of like the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the British. But
like, speaking more about like all of the colonialism, like this, like Spanish especially, because we all know, you know, like Spanish colonists are what made America's discovery famous. Huzzah, love that for us. But so there's also a throwaway line that's basically like about how like their colonies of the New World had fallen as well, and it all makes sense. Like it's all like, well, of course it's not gonna go. Like, you guys might have your boats, but
so I was wrong. The British did it first.
Okay.
1807. The French were not till 1816, and it didn't take effect till 1826. So.
Yeah. But I mean, again, like, I don't know how involved the French were, like, directly, because let's be real, they also, like, their country was in such upheaval from the late, 18th century into the early, I'm saying that right. The early 18th century into the early 19th century, because of their own revolution and then Napoleon and everything, which like brings us to where they are right now. Like, they might have some involvement in the slave trade, sure, but it is minimal at best, because Napoleon is like busy, like trying to conquer all of Europe. And also, just gotta say that just setting, because we will get back to it, I'm sure, but setting like the slave trade and the colonialism and what happened in Africa aside, like, you get to the end of this book and you find out how dirty the British are about like the sending that sick dragon back to back to France to infect all of their dragons. And it's like, I know that they think of them as like animals and not, free thinking, beings, as we who are reading the books know them to be, and as the Chinese know them to be, and as the Africans know them to be. But wow, that's like, I mean, this is like low core, because like, actually, no, you know what? I'll give you an example. That's like somebody having a litter of puppies, and their puppies come down with parvo, and they're like, well, I hate this humane society in my town. I think they're kind of jerks, because like they're always trying to get me to fix my dogs. So I'm going to send my puppies with parvo to that humane society to infect all their puppies with parvo. Like, and these are just these are like just dogs, you know what I mean? Not like free thinking beings like the dragons are. I don't know. It's really fucked up. Like, that whole thing.
Didn't they essentially? Didn't the Europeans essentially do that with actual people? So why are you shocked that they would do it with dragons?
Yeah, straight up, like the U.S. did that with smallpox.
Oh no! Not. I'm not saying I'm shocked. I'm not saying I'm shocked. I'm just saying that it's like, wow, British, you be so dirty. Like,
yeah, cynic Nami's gonna come back to play right now, because like, absolutely unfucking surprised. Like people in power will do disgusting things to keep that power, and it's like, of fucking course they do this. Like, I was sitting there and I'm like, this tracks.
Oh, I saw it more as well, it's war and we're going to do the dirty war things, which, you know, like I don't know, like dropping IEDs on completely innocent people in the Middle East. Like,
And then, like, in fairness, though, like, I didn't even read into it that much because, like, the smallpox blankets literally happened in a time of supposed peace. Like, you know, like, humans in power are capable of disgusting things, and they don't need excuses to do this because they will just make the excuses as it comes up.
yeah.
And, like,
oh, I mean, it's like, I don't want to say like I was surprised by it. I wasn't. I don't want to say I'm like reading into it. I wasn't. It was just more of a like seeing it, like just seeing that dirtiness on the page and the very like calculated like way, and the fact that, you know, Lawrence and Temeraire are like, wait, no, this is bad. This shouldn't be happening. And you know that they're going to go back to Britain and face treason charges because of it. It's just like, oh my God, like the society is disgusting. People are disgusting.
yeah,
Why are we like this?
I think that's part of the reason that I really like this book as well. Because, like, Naomi Novik didn't shy away from showing the shitty things that people do.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, a lot of, you know, historically based books like to hand wave the shitty things in history away, which is why I generally don't like them, and which is why Temeraire wasn't doing it for me at first, because it was just like, la-di-da, we have dragons, everything's fine. And clearly it was not. And so, like, this book, for me, really, really nailed it, because it was like, all right, so we spent this time establishing the rules of this world, establishing what's different and what's going on. So now I can tell you how we're going to fix it. And I was like, yeah.
Probably too much time, in my opinion. Like, I
way too much time. I could have done with like all the first 3 books in like.
I think there's a lot of exposition that happens in the first 3 books, because that was another thing I mentioned to you guys, is that yes, there's still some exposition in this book. There's still some like, we're wandering around the countryside trying to find mushrooms, and you spend like 30 pages on this when you could have spent like 2. Show don't tell. But
I think this is a hallmark of Naomi Novik's writing style, though, because like after reading these books and reading Spinning Silver as well, which I eventually did enjoy Spinning Silver, but it was an absolute slog for me because it was so slow. And I thought it was slow because of like the fairy tale vibe. But the more I think about it, I think that's just the way that Novik writes. And I think she likes writing slow build things. Obviously, this is coming from reading only 5 of her books, but I'm gonna read more because I do like the like political commentary that she is putting in there and that she is delivering on now finally. And so, you know, like, I think this might just be part of her style, in which case it's not for me, but also like I'll stick around because your political commentary is doing it for me. Interestingly enough, though, like, very weird thing, like Goodreads, when I like posted that I finished this, it was like, congrats, you finished this book, what's next? And it showed me like some of the reviews of this book, and apparently a lot of people DNF'd after this book because they didn't like it. And they were like, it got too political, it was slow. And I'm like, the fuck were you reading before?
yeah, what?
And I'm just like,
I mean, in a way, they're right. It was quite a bit more political than the first 3 books. If you know, equate politics with slavery is wrong and colonialism is wrong. Slavery was wrong, is wrong. Colonialism was wrong, is wrong. And let's like, I can write an alternate history and change these things. Like,
apparently all they wanted was a hoity-toity British man in tight pants running around with his dragon and being like, oh my goodness, my manners! What am I to do with my manners? I must have some tea, but I am on an adventure. That's my Lawrence impression.
Yeah, I don't, Jonathan, like, did you perceive this book as too political? Like, we actually talked about it a little bit, Friday night or Saturday. I think it was Saturday night. And Jonathan was like, this is like fun reads for me, which is also like, this is fun. It was.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't consider it overly political. I mean, I've read a lot of alternate histories that
It's not. It's not. That's the thing. It's really not.
It's this, yeah. It's just imagining what would happen if you had dragons. Yes, you can tell a political story, but I don't think that's the point of Naomi Novik's
Yeah, and it's like
writing.
Base level of like human decency. It's like, hey, even in old timey times, you know what's bad? Going into people's houses and telling them, no, this is my house. You know what's also bad? Going to other places and taking the people and being like, your property now. And it's like, huh, what strange concepts.
Actually, funny aside, that you just said, like, going into other people's houses and saying this is my house now, that actually sort of happens in the next book. like very literally with dragons. So I was like, I can't wait for you to read that and be like, oh,
is Temeraire gonna like go take?
I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you.
I mean, in some ways, I'm surprised actually that this wasn't. I guess in some ways, I'm surprised that dragons have not taken over more areas of the world.
That too, yeah.
I mean, I don't quite understand. That's the one thing with this story, that so many of them are so, quote, domesticated to a certain degree. If they're as smart as humans and they're much bigger and stronger and more powerful than humans, and yes, there are fewer of them, but why they haven't just taken over, I haven't figured out yet.
Well, there aren't, you gotta remember, like, there aren't really that many of them, even in the places like, okay, so you think about China where there's a ton of dragons, the people are still far more numerous because the dragons don't, like, they only produce so many eggs and they don't always produce eggs when they mate. And the eggs take how long to hatch? Like, I mean, Temeraire's egg came from China and sailed like basically around the world before, like, I think they said 8 or 9 months, and who knows how old it was when they sent the egg, like when they put the egg on a ship. So I'm just saying, like, there really aren't that many dragons.
There seem to be far more of them than I would expect based on their size and how easy they seem to be to breed in this world, based when they asked Temeraire to breed and other dragons to breed, considering they live hundreds of years, or 100 years. So
no, this makes sense. Yeah.
So I don't quite understand why they have not pretty much at least established their own parts of the world where they rule. Well, they apparently have in Africa, but other than Africa, I would have expected it actually in more places.
Well, I feel like that's the thing, though. We've only really seen the European side of things, right? And we've seen Europe and we've seen Africa now, and we also saw China.
And we saw China.
And in a sense, though, in China, the relationship that the dragons have with humans is much more harmonious and equal there.
Right.
So, like, you know, it seems that, like, depending on the intelligence of the main dragons in the space, as in China seems to have the most intelligent dragons, that, like, the sort of relationship that comes in, that, like, happens because of that makes sense. And it seems like in a place like Britain, where dragons were smaller in size and still not as abundant, people were able to outnumber them and breed them before the truly dangerous ones were able to come under control, / they were able to breed enough of the tinier ones to subdue the big ones so that they could have the big ones.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. There's not that many big ones, and there's not a lot that have the special, you know, that powers. Have the special powers like Temeraire with the divine. Like, there's so few celestials in the world, and like
there seem to be a lot of
fire breathers.
Well, there seem to be a lot of the acid dripping ones.
Yeah. But I think
a lot of long wings, but that's only because the long wings were specifically being bred for over 100 years.
And I don't know if I think that Britain bred them into existence. I don't think they existed.
No, they did not exist.
Yeah.
The long wings were created. It was sort of like mentioned in the, like, aside at the end of the first book that was like, here's my notes for my self, and I was like, give me this.
And that's actually another important thing to remember, is what happens when you, like, when they do the special breeding thing, because that really comes out in Tongues of Serpents, just saying.
Ooh, I'm excited for dragon.
Yeah, I know. Nami loves like the biology aspect of
So is
things.
So this special breeding in Tongues and Serpents when we find out about Harcourt and Riley's child? The special breeding there?
Can we just talk about Catherine's terrible taste in men? Because Catherine has terrible taste.
Oh my god! I like whenever.
I don't even think it's a terrible taste in men. I mean, first of all, again, times, everything they said about the guy, except for the fact his family owned slaves, was positive, right?
Yeah. I mean,
woman, I guess she wouldn't care.
I mean, yes, that is a turnoff by our today's standards. It's probably less of a turnoff then. Then the second thing, in this particular case, I think she's only getting married. The only reason she's doing it was feeling sorry for the guy in case it's a boy.
It was a straight up pity marriage, and I respect her for that. Also, can we talk about Lawrence's proposal to Jane, and Jane just being like, "What the fuck, no?" and laughing him off. It was so funny because this whole book, I was like, "Man, Lawrence, I respect you so much. You're doing so great, bud. Look at you go!"
Well, I'm more upset about the whole. I still don't understand the whole. We can't admit the women are actually in the core thing. Ugh. When I can't imagine this is now a secret. That's what some, yes, it shouldn't be widely meant. It could be not widely mentioned, but enough people had to have seen women riding long wings at this point in the military that the secret would be out and not last very long. I just don't get that either. This concept that this is some great secret, I just don't buy that you could keep that from anyone.
People want to see what they expect to see. So while technically, logically, it doesn't make super sense, but if you're a woman doing active things, you're going to be wearing a sports bra, so you're going to look flat, you're going to have your hair back, you're going to have been in the sun, so you'll be tanned and freckled. And why would anybody assume that you'd be a woman?
It's just like Arya with Gendry. It does. Yeah, you might hide it for a few days, but after a while, enough people will know, and then the word will get out.
But the thing is, they're not ever hiding it from the people they're ever close to. There's no reason for the Longwing captain specifically to interact with broader Britain or even officials.
Not broader Britain, but they would with the army. They would with the navy. I mean.
But honestly,
there'd be enough crossover that, and then some able-bodied seaman on the ship would get drunk at a bar, and I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
I mean, I think you're giving people way too much credit, because I think when people want to keep a secret, they can keep a secret, especially when it's people. It's never.
It's hundreds of people who get drunk when they go to get off the ship. As soon as they get off the ship, I just don't buy it's not going to get out.
Also, overestimating how many Longwings are leaving Britain, because it sounds like they're too valuable to leave Britain. I don't think they're sending the Longwings on the boat. Yeah. I don't think.
Well, not on the boat, but they're defending the Navy. I mean, yeah, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it.
Any other dragon, any other person on the dragon could talk to the boat people instead of the female captain. It's like I get why it seems like a boat could be concealed, but think about it. Each of these Longwings can carries 20 to 30 crew. Literally any other person on that crew could interact with the Navy, and the female captain never has to be in sight. So it's
But she was, but they weren't, right? I mean, even in Cape Town, she immediately went to Grey, to the army. So they're treating her. She's treating with Grey in the army. So obviously Grey knows, and therefore people on his base know. I just, as I said, I just don't buy it. I just don't. I don't understand how you. I would think that this would be one of these arguments in Parliament that they're arguing over nothing as Rome is burning, which seems to be the thing for the British Parliament in this era, which isn't much different than today. But
well, I don't know. Like, so you were talking about the Long Wings leaving Britain, though. Did
I'm
you
not leaving them. I'm just saying, in general, I just don't. This whole
well,
attitude of the attitude of Lawrence that he had to basically pretend that Roland's daughter, who's a member of his crew, is his
I see.
illegitimate child, just seems like making things far more complicated than he needed to.
I think that was a mistake. That was and to be honest, it feels it's very comedy of errors to me.
Yeah, it's Lawrence is a dramatic baby and doesn't know how to have a straight conversation with his father, which he could have done at any point. It's like that was absolutely a comedy of errors. That was Lawrence being like, oh, Pedig, what do I do? Oh, she's my best.
Well, but he never actually said that.
He never said that. He just let her assume.
Exactly.
And he said, because the truth would be too difficult. I mean, come on. That's what I just don't buy.
The thing, I think you underestimate the view that men had of women in this time in history. Like, the whole, like, a woman is a damsel in distress constantly is sort of like the pinnacle of what Regency society opinion is.
Well, and on top of that, like they even with Jane Roland becoming commander,
Admiral,
whatever she is at the beginning when they get back to England, I can't quite remember.
Admiral.
Like when she is in command of the Corps, that literally only happened because the guy who held the position before her lost his dragon, which honestly, that's sad. Like. Poor guy,
and lost his marbles.
Yeah, and
but there were other people they could have picked, right?
There was one other guy, one other person that had the seniority that she did, and he was. I don't remember exactly what the description was, but his dragon was also very, very ill, and he was also kind of like. He was not a leader either. Like just him personally was not a leader, and it was like. God, guess I gotta put the fucking woman in charge, like, and even then it's she's still expected to, I don't know, like it, I mean, I agree that it's silly, after all this time that they're still trying to hide this when all of the Long Wings will only accept women as their captains and, and also you've got, because Excidium is a regal copper. Is that right? He's a big one. He's a heavy.
He's a long wing.
Oh, he's a long wing. For some reason, I thought he was a heavyweight.
Yeah, he's a long wing. Also,
giant. He's a heavyweight long. Like he's a giant long wing. Also, long wings are heavyweights.
But yeah. So I mean, it's like I get it only because like we're it. You just have to think like this is Jesus 220 almost 220 years ago now. Like
this way, even in our society today, when you hear that like a woman like a woman is going into the military, it's like, oh my God, are you sure you can handle it? Like literally that exists.
Who says that today?
A lot of people.
So many people. Jonathan,
but also for not for completely incorrect reasons, because women in the military deal with a lot of nasty shit. Mm-hmm. I've had several female friends who have been in the military, and most of them have dealt with, at the very least, like middle grade sexual harassment. Like, and that's at the very least. But I mean, honestly, I think that like that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is like
we're lucky. I don't know. We seem to be a group of people that has surrounded ourselves with other like not shitty people.
But like, I mean, like even some of the most conservative people I know who are family members. I mean, the women in that are a lot of them went into the military and had military careers. So I don't think I just.
But that's now, like,
that's what I'm saying today. That's why I said who thinks that way today. But
that's a problem. Like, we're not looking at today. We're looking at 200 plus years ago, and not only because the thing is, not only are there grown women in the aerial corps, there are like Emily Rowland
young
is
children.
a child. She's a child, and I will say that she's coming into her own. She's 12.
An officer at 12.
Yeah,
so,
and
she's 12 whole years now. Like, she has to take care of the other children now. Like, Emily, my precious bean.
Yeah,
bean.
It's like, having just read like the 6th book, I'm over here just like, I gotta keep my mouth shut, because in the 6th book she's like coming on to 15, I think, and things are very rough for her in Lawrence's mind, but she's just like, whatever, man. And everybody else that's been in the Corps forever is like, yeah, whatever, man. Like,
she's having a great time. Lawrence is like, but manners, can your lady parts wear pants?
But yeah, the whole thing where Lawrence is just like, it's whatever. And honestly, like, it's not really harming anybody for them to think that Emily is his bastard child. Like,
I just think it's hilarious that he literally could not think of any other way to solve the situation, that he was just like, oh my god. Mom straight up sends like garnet necklace to her illegitimate grandson, and he's just like, oh shit, Emily's right here, and I'm gonna tell her that Emily liked it and said thanks, and now she's gonna know, and I'm I was like, Lawrence, you dramatic idiot. There are like 17 ways out of the situation that I see right now.
Well, and so honestly, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to change the subject a little bit, like try to segue into other well-to-do families who have children in the Corps, and we're not talking about Rankin. I want to talk about Ferris.
Rankin is rank.
Yeah, Rankin's not even around, but like, I want to talk about Ferris and what the heck, what is going on there? Like, so Lawrence, when they get back to Britain, he ends up spending the night with Ferris's family, and Ferris is all embarrassed about it at first. And Lawrence is like, he thinks it's because Ferris's family is poor. And then he finds out that they are like actually like well-to-do, like important people. And they are just obsessed with the fact that Ferris is in the aerial corps, and they're just like, everything's great and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wow, because we get nothing else.
In my mind,
I didn't, that wasn't my interpretation of that at all.
So honestly, Jonathan, I'm interested in what you have to hear, because I like didn't read into it much, but all I sort of read was like kind of like a liberal family in a super conservative area being like, yes, we're accepting, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of how I saw it, is that they were trying to put on a show that they supported their son, but to the point of absurdity. But they actually didn't really believe it themselves, but they just felt like they had to support their son for proper etiquette.
I think some of them do. I actually think some of them really do. Like, his mom, I think, was maybe one of them. And it's been a bit since I read this book, but it did feel that some, if not most of his family was really like, yeah.
I think there's a difference between loving your kid and feeling proud of them for doing and encouraging them to make a liberal choice when you've grown up in a conservative society and being proud of that. And then there is the level of showboating that his mother did, which was like, we are liberal and I'm tooting my horn about it because we are being better than you. And that is what I felt the vibes were from her being like, oh yes, I'm supporting the aerial corps by sending my son there. How dare you not do the same? Clearly I am superior here. We're doing all the correct things. Why haven't you done the correct things? And that's not to say that she's not proud and like supportive of her son, but she's also like kind of on a high horse about
I mean, I think it's similar to the first to the family and says, "We sent our child into the Army or to the Navy or to the Marine Corps, in this case, the Air Force. What are you doing for the country? I would call you chicken hawks who are sitting in Parliament arguing for colonialism and expanding the empire, but you're not actually putting anyone in your family on the line." I mean, I saw it more like that than necessarily the liberal of the Corps itself. I think if it had been in the Navy, it would have been the same way.
I think you're absolutely right, Jonathan. I think I only read it into as being liberal since the Corps itself obviously is so liberal comparatively, and that this is definitely more an army, like a fancy family being like, we did our army duty.
We did our duty to the country. What are you doing? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. See, this is why I wanted to hear your thoughts, because I was like, I'm 99% sure you've got it right, and I'm like, kind of like, I'm like running in circles around correct, and I'm like, maybe I'm here.
Yeah, it was hard for me to. I really didn't form like an opinion on this, and that was why I was like in our notes. I was like, what's up with this guy's family? And the quote that I highlighted for this was, and this is it's about Ferris directly. He, as in Ferris, soon made his goodnights and escaped again, leaving Lawrence to the rueful consideration that the cold and open hostility of his father might yet be preferable to a welcome so anxious and smothering.
And I think Lawrence also misses the point here too. Like, Lawrence very much misses it. The part that's upsetting isn't like the smothering. Like, the smothering would have been nice if it was smothering just for the sake of missing him. But like, what Ferris's family is doing is like, they're specifically like peacocking him around to their friends to be like, we did the right thing. Did you do the right thing? And that's the part that Lawrence is missing, and that's the part that Ferris is embarrassed about.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly what Ferris is embarrassed about.
Poor Ferris. I just want to give him a hug.
I know. Poor guy. And he's pretty, like, he's cool too. Like, he's just like, I don't really want to do this, but like, also I know that like my family is the only one that can like properly put you up, sort of, kind of. Like,
that's a really nice bed, and it would be mean to not give it to you. But also, I am so fucking sorry, Ferris.
All right. So moving on, just because we still have like so much to talk about. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about was that we got more on the lives of dragons elsewhere. So like, just a brief touch on what happens at the end before we go back to the African dragons. Like, in France, Napoleon is improving things for dragons based on Leanne's suggestions, pavilions, widening the streets, etc. And that also made me think about like when I went to Paris and thinking about how wide the main streets are and being like, like Naomi is actually like pulling on like, the main avenues in Paris being so big, like unnecessarily big, it seems now even, but like,
it shows, like, first off, Naomi's insight, because I didn't even realize that Paris streets were that big, because I have been, but it has been a while. But just like,
I mean, there are still little alleyways and stuff, but there's a lot of really, the main thoroughfares are huge.
But like, what I really enjoyed with this was like Lawrence's whole like being torn on how well Napoleon is changing things to make dragons comfortable, but also being uncomfortable with the fact that the only reason this change is happening is because Napoleon's a dictator. And I think that was like a really interesting and good contrast, because like, like, objectively speaking, Napoleon was kind of a shitty person, but objectively speaking, I'm sure he helped some people somewhere by using his dictatorial powers for good. And like, it was like a very, like, it was a cool nuance about Napoleon that I didn't expect to get. And I also really enjoyed just the aside of like how Leanne was the first to be healed by the mushrooms, and Temeraire is just like, I don't want to go talk to her. She's going to give me shitty tea and I'll have to sit there and drink it. And then she's going to this snide remark, and I'm not going to get that it's an insult until I think about it later. And then I'm going to be mad and I'm going to have to pretend to like the tea. And I was just like, I was so
Oh my god, the whole thing where he was like, she's gonna say these snide things and I'm gonna think they're fine, and then I'm gonna think about it and realize they're mean, and it's like, oh, you poor child.
that's how it goes. But yeah, no, I loved it because it was such a good example of just like seeing like the changes that Napoleon made. I was like, heck yes, like it can be done, but also like that like everybody in Paris is probably upset about this. Like,
Oh, all the people for sure.
exactly. And it's like it was like so interesting to see Lawrence sitting there being like, yeah, it would be nice to have this, but we also can't do it this way. And like seeing that perspective. Meanwhile, sweet baby Temeraire is just like, oh, I love it. Pavilions. Give me more pavilions. Also, the fact that Napoleon straight up like runs in and like kisses Lawrence on the cheeks, I was like, what a French thing to do, you French man. Me with my French stereotypes. I'll admit it. Kissing on the cheeks is one of them. And the fact that Napoleon runs in and does the cheek kisses, I was like, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like you said, like, well, one of the quotes that I pulled, like I didn't pull that many quotes from this book, but one of the quotes I pulled was Lawrence saying like, or thinking he was glad to see Temeraire contented and sincerely so, but he returned to his cell lower in spirits, conscious that Temeraire would be as happy here as he was in England, happier perhaps. And it's like, if Liane hadn't been there, this hadn't been all Liane's doing, and Napoleon was somehow just doing this of his own accord or whatever, like,
I think even with Liane there, like Temeraire would be happier in France right now. Like, it just like objectively speaking, like this is what Temeraire wants. Like, I think Temeraire would be happier in France right now. And unfortunately for him, he's got a stupid, honorable, complex captain who's like, I need to go hand myself over for my treason charges. And like, in a way, I did understand his reasoning because he kind of explains it at the end of the book where he's like, if I don't go back, they're just going to think that it was like selfish and like monetarily driven and that I just, did this to escape and retire happy. And that's not the case. I did this because it was wrong to let the dragons die. And like, we can't not highlight that. And in a way, I like that he's going back, not just because he recognizes that he needs to, quote unquote, be punished for treason, but because he acknowledges that the reason he committed treason was important enough that people need to talk about it, and it's not going to be talked about if he doesn't go back. And I thought that was like way more insight than I expected for Sir Honor McHonor Pants. Right now, it's like, there's like
Honor
Honor McHonor Pants shares those pants with Zuko, and that's pretty much it.
Well, the other thing in terms of like we get more on the lives of dragons elsewhere. I briefly touched on this a few minutes ago, but like, how did you guys feel about, Jonathan, like, how did you feel about the dragons in Africa? I mean, they are literally treated as like they're kings and queens.
Well, it's Jaconda.
Jaconda, yeah, I like that.
Jaconda,
yeah.
The super advanced society hidden in the jungle that doesn't allow itself to see the outside world, or that hides from the outside world.
Well, I mean, advanced in the sense that in the sense that they're treating dragons the way they are. I mean, they, as we know, like they are asking Lawrence about, I mean, they don't have the technology that other societies have, obviously. They don't know, what Europe even looks like. But yeah, I mean, and but
they have hundreds of dragons.
Right. And they're the leaders, really. Like, I mean, the people are the, like, they do the speaking,
right,
too, and everything, but they revere the dragons. I would say, like, even more than the Chinese do, because they believe that they are the reincarnations of their dead leaders. Like,
no, wasn't it the other way around?
No, the dragons are the reincarnations of the ancestors.
Yeah,
but the
dragons
dragons at least are leaning.
The dragons are
The
protected.
dragons seem to believe that.
Yes. Oh, they absolutely do, because
The dragons believe that too, not just the humans.
But the dragons believe this because they are taught this while they're in the shell. Just like Temeraire learned languages, like he learned British, French, and Chinese.
Oh my God,
to a point.
that's so true. There's that whole
That's a good
segment where
point.
they're like singing the story
they're singing
of their past life to the egg.
To the egg. Yes. They are
That's a good point.
they're teaching the dragon in the egg about all of its past lives.
Oh my God, I didn't even connect that. That's such a good catch, Tara.
Yeah, because like the current king is actually a female dragon, but is they believe the reincarnation of
the
a
grandfather
male,
of Mrs. Erasmus or whatever her.
No, they're not related.
No, yeah, they're different tribes, but they're in league. Like the Tsawana have gathered all of the tribes together to like all the tribes that have been, decimated by slavery have been gathered together.
But wasn't the point that they thought that was the granddaughter?
No, the point is that particular dragon realized that she was his granddaughter.
That's what I'm saying, right? Exactly.
But that's the thing. And Kefense is the leader of their tribe, but
Kefense is not related to the king.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So the king, she is just another dragon. She just is the one that is either in charge of the biggest tribe, the one that brought them together, whatever it happens to be. I don't know what it was that made her the king, but Hannah is the only person left of Kefense's tribe, and Kefense's tribe got decimated by slavers that took them all when Kefense was young. So Kefense was freshly hatched, and this is how Hannah knew him and remembered him. And Hannah was 9 when they were taken, and all of his tribe was taken, and Kefense was left. And then later on, Kefense, in this book, obviously he finds Hannah, and that's why he wants to take her and her 2 kids back, because they are, his offspring in his mind.
It's very, it's not. Sorry, it's not super. They don't go into a lot of detail about it, but the Tsawana, that's the tribe that the king dragon is part of. The Tsawana gathered together all of the tribes that have been decimated by slavery, and they are in a way now one tribe with many different little sects, I think is how I would describe it. And so Kefense is the only one left from his little sect until he sees Hannah. And so the king dragon is the king because they made him the king, because they gathered everybody together and said, fuck this, we're not allowing it anymore, we're gonna do something about it. And let's be real, I mean
they heckin' did something.
Yeah, I feel bad that her husband, Hannah, the Reverend Josiah Erasmus, got killed, because the reason they killed him is because I think it was something based on his facial tattoos or something, or I think it was based on his facial tattoos, but it could have just been based on his looks or whatever. They knew he was from one of the tribes that actually helped the Europeans enslave other tribes. So they assumed he had been part of it. And when he stepped up to defend Hannah, they didn't understand what he was doing. So they just murdered him, which is a really just sad outcome, because he really was a victim in literally all of this. And we get so little of any of that, because as it's very clear that Hannah cared for him, and she tried to explain, to Lawrence after the fact, he had nothing to do with it, but they didn't, all they saw was he was part of that tribe, and he was part of, that tribe was part of what led our tribe into slavery. And, and honestly, that's a very real story.
Most of the people captured and sold into slavery were not captured by white people.
Right. But yeah, it's just, you know, the whole like the reverence with which they treat the dragons, less because they're powerful, you know, beings in their own rights, and more because they believe that they, you know, encompass the souls of the leader, the ancestors, the leaders that came before them. It's a really like neat turn or twist on things. You know, like we've got China, they revere the dragons because they're dragons, but here they revere them because they believe that they are, you know, part of this cycle, that they are part of this cycle, you know, and
like, it's super cool, but all I can picture is that the reason this started is because some kid was really sad that their parent died. So they hugged a dragon egg and told it stories about their parents, and the dragon came out and it was like, I love you, my sweet child. And the kid was like, Mom, you're back.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like that brief, and I really think it was almost too brief that we get that one little thing where they're singing the stories of the ancestors to the dragon egg, and it's like that's how they do it, you know. But at the same time, it's like the dragons don't mistreat the people don't mistreat the dragons. They're living in a symbiotic relationship that's really kind of beautiful in a different way from the way the Chinese do it, but and actually in a better way, really, when you think about it, because in
a way
China,
capitalism, and I'm a fan.
Yeah, exactly. I like the symbiotic,
realistic symbiotic relationship. Like, give me more of that shit.
So, gosh, like so much happened in this book. Like but one thing I just want to touch on, because I'm still so mad about it, is like I am so happy that Damane, I'm not sure how you would pronounce that. Damane, I figured it was Damane and Sifo. Sifo. Okay, you listened to it, didn't you?
I mean, listen, it is narrated by a white man, so it's also possible that I'm wrong, but that
I would hope that the author gave him. I would hope that in this case, unlike Game of Thrones, the author gave him pronunciation guides. So Damane and Sifo, like I love that they stay part of the story. Like that they, you know, Lawrence realizes that they are going to be caught up in the, you know, kind of takeover of the settlement. Yeah. And
I'm so happy that he sees them and saves them. And I'm so happy that Damane doesn't actually die. Because like the way it kind of goes down is like he sees like the like settlers attacking them, and I'm just like, you fucking dirty colonists, like attacking children, like go die in a hole.
And all they want is their one fucking cow. Like they just want their cow that they were
literally the fact that like this dude
they were being underpaid.
But what the fuck happened to the dog? I'm still mad about this because that dog just is gone.
He's fine. He's just a feral dog now.
Best life. Like he definitely made a dragon friend. He's guarding those mushrooms. He's having a good time.
He better
He's
be.
just become a dingo.
But yeah, no, like the fact that like these like the colonists literally were like in the middle of a fucking invasion where they're like literally being murdered. They were like, oh no, can't let this little kid steal a cow. Like, the fuck is wrong with people? Hate humanity. Colonizers go. Fuck.
I have to believe you guys that the dog escaped and is just living its best life.
Oh, dog absolutely escaped. No question about it.
The dog is perfectly happy getting high on mushrooms.
I still
thriving compared to everybody else.
I still really, really like. Because like there was that moment where like Temeraire was like, ugh, this annoying dog. And Lawrence was like, we need that dog. And Temeraire was like, fine. And let the dog like curl up next to him. And I was like, please let him have a pet dog forever. And now he doesn't. And I was very sad about that.
It's okay. Temeraire has adopted 2 children instead.
This is true. The
fact that those straight up like Lawrence and them, they were like, so what's going to happen to these kids? And Temeraire's like, what do you mean what's going to happen to them? They're on my crew. Like,
duh. They're mine. I love how Temeraire, it's very, to be honest, is how I feel about like Ice and Firecon people. It's like, oh, you've attended Ice and Fire Con? You're my family now.
Mhm.
Be prepared for me to, at the very least, like, virtually hug you all the time because you're mine now. Like, not in a possessive way as Temeraire does, but just like you have become a part of this and you don't get to go away.
Future Temeraire, here are all my shiny gold. Here's all my shiny jewels. Here's my family. They're all humans and I love them. Here's my pet puppy. I went back to Africa to get him back.
Oh my God, I wish.
Straight up though, Emily, like when she sees like the two boys and like her like starting to teach them how to read and stuff is so cute. And her being like, yeah, I have to take care of the children now. And Lawrence being like, you're fucking 12. Like, what?
Oh my gosh. And like, just wait. They don't go away, either one of them.
Oh,
I love it all so much.
That makes me glad. That makes me glad. I am a bit sad though, because what's his face left? The the half Nepalese man who helps them get the ferals.
Oh, Tharke.
Tharke, yeah. I was really sad that Tharke left. I wanted Tharke to stay. Because I was like, you're one of like my 3 brown people in this. Or actually at the time, you're my 1 brown person in this. Please stay, buddy.
You got the cook. You got the cook.
Is the cook brown? It was never specified.
Well, he's Chinese. He's Chinese.
Gungsu.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that
he
cook.
is.
Yes.
Yeah, Gungsu is still around.
And doesn't he have like a team of cooks from China, or at least one other?
No, Gungsu is the only one left.
Oh, that's right. The other one ran away and died.
Yeah, I think my favorite Gungsu moment though was kind of hilarious because there really only was this one, but it was like where he like straight up goes to Temeraire and he's like, "You're not eating. I must be a terrible cook. Woe is me." I was like, A+ drama, like, buddy.
Well, because Temeraire is a celestial, like he's uber important. Like if he doesn't like Gungsu's cooking, then everything is like his life is over.
I just love the drama of him being like, you don't like my food, and Temeraire like, no, I'm sorry, I just love my friends, and Gongsu's like, bitch, caught you, eat my food, damn it.
So, before we, there might be other things we want to touch on real quick before we close this up, but the one thing I do just really want to reiterate is Iskirka. Like, I finished this book and I was like Rosa in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where I was like, I've only had Iskirka for a little bit, but if anything happens to her, I will kill everybody and then myself. Because like she's obnoxious, okay? She's obnoxious. She's been obnoxious since the beginning. But I love that we don't see her at all in this entire book. And then we like Temeraire, they all go back to Britain and they're like getting attacked by, a French vessel or dragons, I can't remember. And Iskirka comes.
The vessel is running away from them.
No. They get attacked. They for sure get attacked. And
no,
Iskirka,
they get the French merchant fleet saw them and it was guarded by a frigate, and then started to turn the other way just to avoid them. And then the dragons, the ferals plus Iskirka came in, and then they changed direction and started coming towards them because they were being chased by the other dragons.
Okay, I can't remember exactly what it was. All I know is Iskirka comes in like a fucking. She's just a pirate dragon. She's just like, hey, so I learned about this thing called capital, and I've just been taking prizes left her. And then you find out that she's been like secretly like doing these stealth missions at night, and then coming back and like whispering to the ferals about where they need to go, and like I just like, and she is just dressed Granby up like a fucking idiot.
I love the fact that she seems to be treating Granby like a prize show dog or something, and she's like. Look at my human. I gave him shinies. Look at my pet human. I dressed him up. It was just so funny to me. Also, the best part with her return, specifically with the audiobook, is that, actor goes back into his voice for her, which, I realized in other audiobooks that it annoyed me when guys specifically did like high-pitched girl voices, but he does it so good for her. And he comes back and he's like, it's me, Iskirka. I'm here. I'm a pirate. And it was just so good and so screechy and annoying, and I love it.
Speaking of voices, how do we cast the movie?
Oh my gosh.
Dude,
Who's Lawrence?
About it.
Oh, I can't. I'd have to really. That might be a conversation for
blonde.
another episode because I'd have to really think about
Yeah, I'd
it.
have to think about it. Like, I'm trying to think about blonde actors, and I can't think of any right now. The only person I can think of is Tom Felton, and I don't think that's the vibes.
No. I mean, I'm more thinking
Well,
about the
obviously, it
dragon
needs to have
of-
be someone with a British accent.
Yeah. It's someone who's properly British, not just fake British. I just
Tom
like
Felton blonde.
I just like I everything and the fact that they're like now I'm worried that I'm thinking about the next book. There's like a thing where they're like, yeah, those pharaohs, they follow Iskirka like everywhere. Like she's like their queen because I think it might be the next book that quote comes from.
That doesn't happen.
But like they do though. That's the thing. Like they have been, because they're also getting a portion of the prizes that she takes, and just the whole thing is just. Iskirka amused me to no end in book 3, and I was really sad when we didn't get much of her, or when it was clear we weren't going to get much of her in this book. But when she came in at the end, she came in like a wrecking ball, and I fucking loved it. Like I love everything about her. Like and like I've gone 2 books since then, and she annoys the hell out of me, but also is amazing still. Like it's just hilarious. Like, and her obsession with making Granby like, just like you said, like her doll essentially. Like she's like, I got all these prizes, so my captain gets to wear all these pretty things. And Temeraire is over here like, no one shouldn't have those pretty things. Why can't I take prizes?
Sulking Temeraire because Iskira had shinier prizes was just so funny to me.
Even though, let's be real, Temeraire like brought the cure for the sickness back. Like he because
he didn't
Temeraire.
He didn't pay capital for it though.
Exactly.
Where is his capital?
Give Temeraire the shinies.
So
it's so funny that like the book that was about the plague, like I don't even talk that much about the biological thing except for the biological warfare at the end, because like low-key we knew it was the mushroom, but also it made my biologist self happy to read the summary read like the like back of the book blurb for this book and be like, ooh, dragons get sick. Okay. They look for a cure. I can get behind this. This is my genre of interest. And I think, I'm going to be fair. I did walk into this book with a happier attitude because I was like, at least there's biology I can get behind. But then also it was better. So,
and it's kind of scary a little bit that this book was published in 2007 and the plague that hits the dragons is very COVID like. Please don't say the word out loud because YouTube hates it.
Not though, like it's just a general respiratory illness. Like almost everything's a general respiratory illness these days,
except a very dangerous and highly communicable one. Those were the like ties.
So as
that
a biologist, like I hate to break it to you, that's
How
not
dare
wild. Like that's not wild. Like if we're talking about something,
no. I mean, I know that this isn't like a new thing or anything like that. I just mean like reading this book at this point in time and having this particular disease be very like just in terms of the how communicable it is and how dangerous it is. It was like, oh.
In terms of breeding, like,
but it's much more dangerous to dragons than it is than our current situation.
And also in terms of breeding, like I feel that way about any like plague related thing that I read now. Like no matter what,
it's almost impossible to not
topical. You can't not draw parallels. We're like literally living through it, But like from a biological standpoint, they're like. Yeah, it's both lungs, but like everything's lungs when it comes to illnesses for the most part. Like, like the scary Ebola sort of shit. Like that's not common illness wise, like you don't, in terms of biological contagions, like an illness that makes you do that is infinitely more rare. Therefore, of course, it's something that like makes your lungs angry. Everything makes your lungs angry. Nami's little biology aside.
California makes my lungs angry, honestly.
You don't like California?
It is
my lungs angry.
It is way too dry here for me.
Yeah.
Like I think it's just, I was raised on the East Coast. I am used to the humidity, and I used to be able to go running like 5 miles, no problem. I don't necessarily have like the breathing problems, but it's very weird.
I understand what you mean. Running is really difficult in dry heat, and like,
yes,
you know, while dry heat itself is more tolerable, in my opinion, than wet heat.
Oh, it is.
Makes exercise more difficult. Like,
yes.
You know, India is a very dry heat, which is why, you know, no matter how hot it is when we go to Bangalore, I'm always like, oh, wow, it's so nice. I like never understood why that was. And I was like, oh, it's because it's not humid. Like my body isn't moist. Like, love this for me.
So anyway, we're at about an hour and 15 minutes. I guess one thing we haven't really talked about is the fact that on their, like, it wasn't just that the Tswana took over Cape Town. They pillaged the whole coast and ruined all of the slave ports. And like the one that they're finally able to land in that has people in it is like, it's like the last bastion of like slavery and colonization on the coast, on at least the east coast of Africa. All it is like a destroyed village, a destroyed port with the two like slavers or like a handful of slavers there, like just kind of like living off the land while they starve the slaves that they have, you know. And I was really oh, there goes John. Lost him. Oh no. I was really like, I don't know. Like I loved that it didn't just end in Cape Town, that this was a multi-pronged attack that destroyed like all of it.
Everything about it sparked so much joy. I was like, heck yeah. Get rid of the colonists. It's what they deserved. Of course, my favorite is when they go back to England and they're like, this unprovoked attack. And I'm like, right. Unprovoked. Sit down.
Yeah. One correction, though, it was the west coast of Africa.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
It was west. That is directions.
Yeah, I've got American direction on the mind. Like, I'm on the west coast. You are on the east coast. You're right, though. It was the west coast. My God.
It made me so happy. And honestly, like, I think the funny thing to me was that I knew that the next book starts off with Lawrence being convicted for treason. And my biggest fear was that they were going to like blame like the destruction of like the slave ports on him somehow. And I was thankful that he did something, you know, actually treasonous.
No, they don't do that. They don't do that. But I will tell you this, the fact that he set those slaves free does come back to haunt him, because
oh my God, he already gets a bill at the end of this. Like, dude just straight up walks up to him. Like,
okay, I thought that was in the next book, but yeah. So it is this
book.
Oh, God.
He gets sued.
He walks out of the court martials and they hand him a bill.
No, it was a lawsuit. It wasn't a bill.
Was it a lawsuit?
It was a lawsuit. He was summoned.
Ah, even better.
That's why he said he had to go talk to his attorney.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, I literally like the whole time they get back to England, and England is like, this unprovoked attack, this absolute tragedy. Why would they ever do this to us? And I'm just like,
and for sure there were probably like
the fucking cause.
There were probably pseudo innocent people that died in this, you know, like, I mean,
okay, firm point here. Unless you are at the point where you are A, forced to go live in the colony, or B, born to somebody already living in the colony,
that's what I was
you
thinking
are not blameless.
Yes, yeah. That's what I was thinking about. I'm thinking about like children and like because they decimate like everybody
But
that's
they also
there.
do say that like in Cape Town they weren't like hurting the women and children.
Oh, okay, I missed that then.
Yeah, they
That's
were.
good.
They did say that in Cape Town they weren't hurting the women and children, and any women and children who did die were getting caught in crossfire of like panicked colonists
Yeah.
shooting on themselves. So like,
So yeah, so we've reached this point in the series where it's like again, like when I talked to this to you guys about this book when I first read it like about a month ago or so, I was like, it is so like if I were to rate the first 3 books out of like a 10 on a 10-star rating scale, I would give them I can't remember each, but I would say I would give them like anywhere like from a 5 to like 6-star. Like this is not terrible reading, but I'm not loving it. But I really did enjoy this book. And the next book isn't quite so hardcore, but it's still really good.
So,
I went back and
I would actually rate the first 3 books to be those are the worst types of books because I thought they were okay, and they weren't the best in my mind. They weren't the best written. They weren't the most exciting, but they were just good enough. I wanted to know what happened next.
Yeah.
And those types of books drive me crazy because I invest lots of time into. I really didn't need to invest this much time into these things.
I've been a lot kinder with myself in terms of like, you can just stop reading this series and wiki what happens. And like,
No, you can't. That's cheating.
I know it's cheating, but Jonathan, there's so many good books in the world. We don't have time for this. We just don't.
Especially with work and
I mean, that's not even Cliff Notes. That's even worse than Cliff Notes.
Well, like, in my mind, it's like I want to know what happens, but like if the book doesn't grip me enough that I feel good about investing my time in it, I can still be curious and like not want to keep reading. That's what I was very ready to do with this series, but I'm glad I didn't because this book did do it. This book was a 4-star for me. I know previously I said that I rated 2 and 3 4 stars as well, but I changed that. I ended up rating book 1 2 stars because I was like, bleh. And then books 2 and 3
yeah,
are 3
book 1 wasn't great.
I was like, don't care, don't not care.
Book 2 is better. Book 3 took kind of a step back again, but like this one took like huge leaps forward. And in the next one, you don't get the whole like they're not in Africa, so you don't get the whole, I don't know, the destruction of like African colonialism, which was so great. And also that insight into the lives of dragons in an entirely different area, which you also got a little bit of in book 3, which is the pretty China. Much only reason
in China and also the Ferals.
Well, yeah, no. But I mean, I really liked book 2 and book 3, I think took like a step kind of back from that. Like the Prussian stuff bored the hell out of me. But like, going forward in this series, I right now I've read all of the books that we're covering through the end of the month, and I can solidly say that like the next one is good because you get more of the dragons and their mindset and what goes on in their like it's dragon politics, honestly, is what it is.
Okay.
So there's still some of that Naomi Novik stuff where it's like I really feel like she decided, or maybe her publisher decided. I can't really blame it on her. Like editor, publisher, there were probably more. There's more than her involved in this, and somebody decided these books need to be exactly this length because so far they're basically all the same length. All of them the same exact length, and it's like, could you just like not include some of this boring stuff, and then you could maybe the book would be shorter. It would be honestly, I think if she cut out some of her exposition, it would be like each book would be about 50 to 100 pages shorter, but I think she splits them up properly in terms of like this book is about this, this book is about this, this book is about this. I don't disagree with that, but I do believe they could be shorter. And a lot of the problem is her exposition in them. And I don't know if that's the way she wanted to write them, or if it's because somebody told her, no, this isn't long enough, add something else. And you know, so they all still have that.
I think it might be the way she writes, because like I said, I saw it in Spinning Silver as well, and I put it aside to like fairy tale vibes writing, but I think it might just be her writing style.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Okay, so any last thoughts before we close out?
Crush the colonizers.
Yeah, no, for real. When I read this book, I legit could not put it down. I don't think it took me but like a few days to read it, which is something.
I whooped when they were like destroying all the colonies. I was like, yippee, good job. Go, dragon.
Oh yeah, when they got to that first colony and it was like burned to the ground. Really? I was like, ah! Yay!
We really like to read about the death of thousands of people.
Colonizers.
I will, and honestly though, those ports weren't colonizer ports. Like the Cape Town was a port full of settlers, but these other ports were mostly just slave trade ports, and they made that like. And I'd have to look them up historically and see if they. I don't know if they.
One of them was.
Existed.
I don't know about the others.
Yeah, I don't know about the other ones specifically, but one, I assume they are. There was no other reason to have ports on Africa at that time. Two, the first one that they specifically go to is specifically a slave port because Lawrence basically and Riley have their weird like, oh, we're not going to talk about this, but we're going to weird apologize and be like, hey, let's avoid the slave port. No, dude, it's okay if we go to the slave port because I support you as a friend. Like that weird conversation. So we know for sure that the one that they straight up burned down was a slave port, and I am here for death of slavers.
Yeah, and that's not to say that there weren't some other people there, but like, yeah, no, they were trade ports. They were, and they're described that way too. Like they were small, they were just, you know, you can pick up some supplies there, whatever. But like, I also just love the fact that like this whole time the British were like, well, we can't go like into Africa because the feral dragons, and it turns out they're not feral at all, which also feral is like clearly just like some distinction that humans give also, the dragons.
It's like very funny to me that their whole thing was like, oh, we can't go into the center of Africa because they're feral dragons. But like, buddy, they just don't speak English. Like, yeah, sit down. It's like,
well, I mean, and we saw that in book 3 because they you know, Arcady and Winge and all those other ferals. I don't even want to call them that anymore. Can we think of another name for them?
The Arcady gang, like the pirate dragons. But they and it's like it's clearly obvious that like all these dragons have society. It's just that like humans haven't looked into it, so they're like, oh, unknown savages, great.
And like the second
ID with the feral dragons a lot because that's what they do. That's what they colonists have historically done to other societies that they found, and they're like,
well, I mean, in book three, like the second they like are stuck in that cave with those dragons, and like there's like this sort of conversation or whatever with them, like. Do they have some ideas that maybe don't fit with what, you know, Lawrence and all them determine is like society? For sure, because they've been living out in the mountains, like just killing goats and shit.
Very objective, like hoity-toity British aristocracy society is not and should not be the norm. Like, ew. Adamantly.
But like I mean, and that's the thing, like
it's like culture exists in other forms, and like these dragons clearly have had it because they are capable of language and communication, and like humans just never bothered to learn, just as they never bothered to learn with other people, and they always just assume that these other groups of people that they don't know about, and thus these other groups of dragons that they don't know about, are feral because they just don't know better. And it's all like, it's one of those things that it's like, it does make sense that you think they're just feral dragons, and meanwhile they're just like, stay out of our fucking land and stop taking our fucking people.
And I think that's kind of a part of what Naomi Novik is trying to portray here. Not just in this book, but in the series as a whole, is like, I mean, the Brits think that these dragons are like barely capable, when clearly that's not the case. And the aerial corps, most of them know that. With the, I know there's some exceptions. The one courier dragon, Nitidus, is that
Follies?
Like Folly. Like there's definitely some dragons that have been bred, not in the best way or whatever. They're a little like they're slower than the other dragons, but they can still speak. They still understand. And like then, you've got these other dragons that it's like Arcady and his dragons aren't stupid by any means. They have their own society. Like Arcady tells like these ridiculous stories to his like dragons, like this. I don't know. It's just man.
Naomi Novik conveys the point in a really great way. It's like just because you don't understand the language that they're speaking doesn't mean that you can just assume that they're not speaking or that they're not intelligent. Like,
yeah,
and it's just like it's like so very on point, and it's like. Right there.
And she really takes it to the next level in this book, where it's like they've assumed these African dragons are just crazy feral dragons that are just murdering everybody that comes in the interior, and it turns out no, that's not at all. They have their own like amazing society, and they are just trying to protect their people. Like, because the dragons themselves are fine, like they're not worried about their lives, but they are trying to protect their people who clearly like who can't protect themselves.
Also, I'm picturing is like them doing show and tell, like with their like little tribes, and being like, "Look, this is my family." And Temeraire is like, "Oh, nice to meet you. This is my family. This is Granby. I had to loan him. He's still technically on loan."
Oh my god!
All I can imagine is dragon family show and tell.
But all right, well, on that note, I think we've covered Empire of Ivory. We all like clap, 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 clap. I really enjoyed this book. Like I really did. I think it took. I think it took everything. Yeah, I think it took everything that like I wanted from this series and made it a reality. And I am excited to discuss the next book with you guys. So on that note. Once again, I'm Tara, along with Jonathan and Nami. Thank you for joining us for Sagas and Sass, and we will be back in 2 weeks to discuss Victory of Eagles, Book 5 of Naomi Novik's Temeraire series. Bye! Bye!